All right, so are you ready to dig into this?
Oh, yeah.
We're going deep on Donald Trump's 2024 win. I've got a whole stack of sources here, and honestly, I was surprised by some of this stuff. Like, did you know Trump's campaign specifically targeted Latino and African American voters?
Really?
Yeah, and his digital strategy, it was key to his success.
Hmm. It's interesting how this all came together. It wasn't just one thing. It was like a perfect storm of strategic campaigning, really tapped into specific anxieties across the American electorate.
Yeah, so let's start with this whole comeback kid narrative. After that 2020 loss, a lot of people thought Trump was done politically, but,
Yeah.
they really underestimated his ability to, I don't know how to describe it. It's like weaving together this nostalgia for his first term while also promising change.
It's true. He was good at that, like bringing back those better times, some voters felt, but also saying, hey, I can fix what's broken now. Think about the issues under the Biden administration. Inflation, new energy policies. That was central to his messaging.
Right? So it's like, remember how good things were? I can bring that back, and I'm the only one who can fix this mess. And a lot of voters were buying it, especially those feeling the economic squeeze.
Absolutely. The economy was the issue. It dominated this whole election. Inflation was hitting families hard.
Yeah.
Groceries, gas prices.
Right, people were feeling it.
Exactly. And Trump honed in on that, promising economic stability control over costs, lower gas prices.
It's like you can picture these families sitting around their kitchen table, stressed about money, their paychecks aren't going as far, and suddenly Trump's there offering what seems like a solution.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is how he tied America first to anxieties about jobs and energy, promising to bring back manufacturing jobs
Ah.
to those areas that were really struggling.
He was speaking directly to people in those states with factory closures, the places struggling to adapt to a changing economy. And he presented this vision of them thriving again.
Okay, now here's the really unexpected part. Trump didn't just rely on his base this time. His campaign worked to expand, reaching out to suburban voters, Latinos, even African Americans.
Wait, he appealed to Latinos and African Americans. I thought those groups were largely against him.
Well, yeah, that was the assumption. But they were strategic. They didn't treat these groups as monoliths. They focused on messages that resonated with subgroups. For example, a lot of Latino voters, especially those with small businesses, were drawn to Trump's promises of economic empowerment and job creation.
So not a broad brush approach, but finding those areas of common ground.
Exactly. And with suburban voters. It was traditional values, a stable economy, safe communities that resonated.
Yeah.
He played on concerns about rapid societal change and offered security familiarity.
Wow, it's like a game of political chess.
Right.
He knew he didn't need everyone, just enough votes in the right places.
Exactly. And speaking of strategy, we can't ignore social and cultural issues either.
Oh, yeah, the culture wars. It seems like they never really go away.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And Trump is really good at tapping into those existing divisions. Education, parental rights, government overreach.
You're right. Like all that controversy around education reform, Trump became the champion for parents who felt ignored.
Absolutely.
Like they have no say in their children's education.
He framed it as a battle for the next generation, playing on fears of indoctrination and a loss of values.
And it wasn't just education, free speech, gun rights, religious freedom. He was defending traditional American values against this encroaching liberal agenda.
It was a very vivid picture of America under threat. And for a lot of voters, that resonated.
Okay, so we've got the comeback narrative, the economic anxieties, reaching out to specific groups, the culture wars. But we can't forget his digital dominance.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. Trump basically pioneered using social media to bypass traditional media. And in 2024, he took it to another level.
His campaign was built on platforms like, well, you know the one. They were constantly putting out viral content memes sound bites.
It spread so fast.
It was like an online echo chamber amplifying his message.
And don't forget the rallies and town halls, that energy, that connection. You can't get that through a screen.
It was like a rock concert.
It really was.
And he was the headliner.
Feeding off that energy.
It's amazing how he controlled the media narrative. He was setting the agenda, shaping perceptions. Traditional media was just reacting.
Playing catch up, yeah.
It's always one step ahead.
Dictating everything.
So we've covered a lot. Trump's comeback economic anxieties, targeted demographics, the culture wars, his digital dominance. It's all starting to look like a perfect storm.
And we're not done yet. There's more to unpack. We've got to talk about his foreign policy, the controversies that fueled his campaign, and his strategic focus on those swing states. It's going to get even more interesting.
I can't wait. Okay, so we just talked about Trump's digital game. But it wasn't just online tactics. He really understood how to use narrative, especially when it came to foreign policy and national security.
Right, you saw a real shift from his last campaign. Less bombast, more measured.
Yeah. It was a change in tone, for sure. He was critical of recent foreign policy decisions, arguing that they weakened America's global position.
Yeah, like America was in retreat. Not the strong and decisive force it used to be.
Exactly. And he tapped into anxieties about America's place in the world. Remember America First?
Oh, yeah.
That resonated with voters who felt like the borders were too open, their safety was being compromised.
It's about more than keeping people out. It's about jobs, trade deals, projecting strength.
He was speaking to voters who felt like America was losing its edge.
It's about national identity, cultural change, economic competition, all those anxieties.
He was offering strength and security.
In a world that felt increasingly uncertain.
We have to talk about the controversies, though.
Oh, yeah, there were a few.
Past statements, actions, all resurfacing.
And the question of whether he'd really changed.
But those controversies didn't seem to hurt him.
If anything, they reinforced this image of him as a disruptor.
For supporters, at least.
This guy who speaks his mind, challenges the status quo.
Even if it ruffles some feathers. Exactly.
It's like that saying, no such thing as bad publicity.
Right.
He stayed in the headlines. For better or worse, he was front and center.
He also played the victim card really well.
Oh, yeah.
Any criticism was an attack.
The establishment.
The deep state.
The liberal media.
It all strengthened his bond with his base.
He was great at going on the offensive.
Turning a negative press into fuel.
Like he thrived on the controversy.
One key takeaway from this election, maybe the most important, is the role of swing states.
It's all about the Electoral College, right? Not just the popular vote.
Exactly. You need those electoral votes.
And that means winning those battleground states.
And they focused on that.
Ohio. Those places where it go either way.
It wasn't just rallies and media. They were organizing, registering voters, getting people to the polls.
Making sure their supporters showed up.
It worked.
Turnout was huge in those states.
And a lot of those voters chose Trump.
It's about winning where it counts.
But it's more than tactics. It's about what this says about the voters themselves.
You're right. What were they thinking and feeling?
The people who actually cast those votes. What drove them to choose Trump again?
That's a huge question.
Despite everything.
It gets to the heart of American politics.
It's a question we could talk about for hours.
We could.
But it's a question worth asking.
If we want to understand what happens next, we need to understand those voters.
Okay, so we've covered the foreign policy shift, the controversies, the swing states. Where do we go from here?
That's the big question.
What does it all mean?
That's what we'll be exploring in our final segment. We'll dig into the deeper meaning of this win, what it says about America, and what it might mean for the future.
Sounds good. We've spent this deep dive really digging into how it happened. Trump's 2024 win, his strategy, the issues, the whole media thing. But now I think we got to grapple with the why. What does it all mean?
Anyone can list the factors. But the real question is, why those factors mattered to voters at this specific moment. It's like we're trying to decipher a code.
Like some kind of cultural code.
Exactly.
Like anthropologists studying ancient artifacts, trying to understand a lost civilization.
Right?
We're piecing together clues to see what this election tells us about America.
And one of the biggest clues is that this win, despite all the baggage, the controversy, it suggests a real deep dissatisfaction.
Like the status quo.
Yeah, a desire for something different, even if it's risky.
So it's not just about Trump as a person, it's what he represents to a lot of voters.
He's like a lightning rod.
Channeling frustrations that have been building for years.
Think about it. Technology changing the economy, globalism, huge social and cultural shifts all happening so fast.
It's overwhelming.
People want something familiar, something stable.
And Trump with his Make America Great Again.
Promising jobs, border control strength on the world stage.
It's a simple solution to complex problems.
It's nostalgia.
This longing for a better past.
When America was on top.
But we know the past wasn't perfect.
And trying to recreate it, well, it's impossible.
So where does that leave us? Trump tapped into this yearning for greatness.
But is it realistic?
And what happens when the solutions don't actually work?
It raises tough questions about American democracy.
Why were so many voters willing to overlook everything?
His flaws, his rhetoric, his disregard for the rules.
It's like a disillusionment with the whole system.
People feel like it's broken.
That the politicians don't get it.
And that's dangerous. When people lose faith in democracy, it opens the door to those who exploit that.
Offering easy answers.
But delivering chaos.
So what now? What does this mean for America's future?
That's the million-dollar question. No easy answers.
Right.
But I think Trump's win is a wake-up call.
We can't ignore these anxieties.
We need to understand what people are going through.
We can't just dismiss Trump voters.
We have to listen to them.
Understand their fears, their hope.
And find ways to bridge the divide.
To rebuild trust.
To create a better future for everyone.
If we don't.
Those forces that got Trump elected, they'll only get stronger.
And that's a scary thought.
We need to find common ground.
A shared vision.
For the future.
This election wasn't just about winning or losing. It was a reflection of who we are as a country.
Where we stand and where we're going.
And it's up to all of us to decide what kind of future we want. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride.